Great. So let's jump into the agenda today. What are we going to talk? First, we will dive into understanding what is user research, or sometimes it is also known as UX research. Then we'll talk about why do we need to do research, right? What is the need of doing a research? And then we'll talk about what are the different research methods and when to use them, right? Then we'll talk about what are the stages in research process. And lastly, we'll talk about most important things to remember while conducting a user research. Okay, so what is user research, or sometimes also known as UX research? So user research is a process of understanding user needs, goals, motivations, and behavior, right? So it's very important. What you are doing in user research is you are trying to understand your target audience or your users' needs, goals, motivations, and behaviors. Okay. So if you are designing something out of your intuition, that means you're not solving people's problem, right? So you need to understand user needs, their goals, and their motivation, and then you should jump into design, right? As in the last week's session, I talked about design thinking as a process, as a framework to be used, wherein I said the first part of design thinking is first stage of design thinking is called empathy. This is what we do in empathy, right? We try to understand their needs, goals, motivations, and their behaviors. Okay, so user research is part of that. Some of the most used methods are interviews, contextual inquiry, surveys, usability testing, and other forms of feedback collection methods, right? So user interview, right? You will call a user, and you try to understand what are their pain point. You or contextual inquiry, where you visit your user's place and try to understand how they are moving around in your UI or in your product with your product, right? Or you can send a survey, or you can do a usability testing, right, with your users to find out any usability issues with your product, and other forms of feedback collection methodologies such as NPS, right? Through NPS also you get a lot of understanding as to what's the problem is with the user, right? Or there might be a feedback channel through which user can send feedbacks. So through this, these are some methods we use to collect or understand users. Okay, cool, very important. Okay, so without user research, it isn't UX at all. Very clear. If you are not doing user research, that means you're not doing UX. So user research is a core aspect of user experience, right? And why it is so important is because you are designing for a human. And if you're designing for a human, and if you don't understand human needs and problem, then you're not designing at all, right? And so it's very important that you should do user research. Okay, so why do we need to do a research, right? I have shown these images earlier also in some of the webinar. I just want to bring it to here as well. You can see this design, right? This is a bowl for kitties to have their food. So beautifully designed, right? They have their ears also been drawn. So foods has been placed inside it, right? Everything's perfect. And what happens when user comes in, right? It just haywire, right? They just comes from anywhere and then start eating their food, right? So this is what user really does. And this, perfect example, somebody have designed the road in a very beautiful way, but user always find a shortcuts. So the context here is that we should understand how your user will react or behave in certain situations. And when you understand those parts, you will be able to design human centricity. Okay, the most important now is why do we need to do research, right? So user research help us to better understand our user. This is very important, right? So it helps us to understand our target audience. It helps us to understand our user, what are their goals, motivation, needs, right? Why are they using our product? All these things, if you do user research, it bring clarity into that. It will help in understanding the usability of the product. right? When you do a usability test, you will understand how usable is your product. Is there any difficulties as far as usability is concerned in the product? That can also be found out in the product. That can also be found out using user research. A better understand opportunities. Sometimes, what happened, out of intuition, everyone in the product team, the product manager, developers, the stakeholders, they will try to create something, or say they come up with an idea and say, let's try to build this. Okay, they say, okay, there is an opportunity here, let's try to explore this. If you directly jump into it without doing a research, that means you are you are not really taking wise decision, or data driven decision there. You're just trying your luck with that opportunity or with that idea, right? So user research will help you understand that opportunity better. When you do a user research, you will be able to say, yes, we have validated this with user, and user does need this idea. We should build this idea, right? This is where user research can help you. It helps save money. As I have given you the example of idea, in the earlier point, same, right? So when an idea comes in and stakeholder says, okay, let's just build it, you didn't do the user research, what happens? After sometimes you will realize, after launching the feature or after releasing it to the users, you'll understand that users are not using it at all. The entire efforts, the entire money which has been put to bring out that feature has been wasted. So user research helps save that money. If you do user research, you'll understand, okay, whether this idea will work or not. And if it doesn't work, you'll drop it there and there, right? But if it works, then you will move forward. And when developers are working, product managers are working, designers are working, everybody's working, right? The business has to pay money, or they have to pay salary to every one of them, right? So their efforts is equivalent to money. Okay, so user research help save money as well. It helps save development efforts. Development efforts are very precious. We should not build wrong things in our sprints, right? We should always focus to build something which will definitely help improve our product. Help in validating ideas. As I said, user research will help you to validate the ideas. For example, what happens sometimes, your big stakeholders comes in the picture and said, I want this to be built in this product, please build it. But you cannot say no to him directly. You cannot say, no boss, we will not be able to do it. Or your managers, right? You can't say, no manager, we will not do it, right? So it will be difficult for you. So when you do a user research, when you go back and try to understand from a users whether this feature functionality required for them or not, and when they have a valid answer, you understand from the users that they doesn't want it, and then you have that recordings or numbers with you, or however you are doing this research, you can show it to your manager and say, look manager, I have done my research, I have understand, I've done this and this to validate your idea, and I found that this idea will not work, or through the research it has been validated that this idea will not work, right? So this is how you should say no to your managers or to your bosses. It will help in validating idea as well. Okay, so these are the benefits of doing a research. Now we'll move on and we'll try to understand what are the different research methods and when to use them. Okay, so there are 4 types of user research which we generally do. First one is the qualitative, second is quantitative, third is behavioral, and fourth is attitudinal. Okay, and when to use what, right? So this is how it has been mapped in a matrix. If you can see, from here to here it's attitudinal and behavior, and from here to here it's qualitative and quantitative. So when you want to understand why and how to fix, right? When you want to understand why is that happening, why users are not clicking there, what is the reason from that, then you have to do a qualitative research, right? When you want to understand how much or how many people are affected, or how many, when you quantify things, then you can do a quantitative research. When you understand what people do, right, that's behavior. When you understand what people really do with my product, or what people will do when I give them this option, right, that's behavior. And when you want to understand what people says, then you have to do a attitudinal research. Okay, we'll move on. Now, under each of these categories, these are the broad categories. Under each of these categories, there are certain things which we do. Okay, or I can say methods or tools which we use to achieve whatever I have talked about in last slide. So under quantitative research or qualitative research, we do user interview, we do contextual inquiry. Under qualitative research, we do survey, online polls. Under behavioral methods, we use eye tracking system. We do A/B testing. We do user analytics to understand users' behavior. And for attitudinal, again, we use user interview and survey. Cool. So we are into the fourth part of this presentation. So what are the stages in research process? So when you have a problem statement with you, when you have a big things to be explored, big idea to be explored, right, or big problem statement to be explored, how to go about it, how to really research, how you should do real research. Okay. So the process, the first thing which you have to find is identification of problem. First, you have to identify a problem, right? Or in a very practical way, your problem statements will be given by your product managers or your team from analytics, right? They will provide you a problem statement. They will tell you that, okay, this is the problem which you have to explore, right? What next? What you should do next? Next, you have to formalize a hypothesis. You have to do your own research. You have to do a investigation, right, to understand why that problem might arise, right? If somebody says that users are dropping off at certain pages, for example, in a checkout page, right, users are dropping off, right? 70% people added the product into the cart, but in the checkout page, they are just dropping off. 70% people, right? So now you have to investigate, and you have to go back and try to understand that journey. You have to, so it is self investigation. We are not talking to user yet. Okay, so it's self investigating. We are trying to understand by ourselves as to what might have gone wrong there. Okay, so we put down the list of things by saying, okay, this might be the issue. The API call might not be going through, the page might be lagging, the UI might be confusing, the UX might be confusing, user not able to understand how much amount, or blah 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 things. We just making a list of a hypothesis as to what might be the reason for this problem. Okay, next we will formulate a research plan. And now we will start creating a plan to validate all the hypotheses which we have created. What are the hypotheses? I have just mentioned that you will have to create a list of hypotheses. Now you have to create a plan of validating this hypothesis. For example, I'll say the UI might be confusing, right? And for this, what we have to do is we have to do a usability testing, right? We have to set up a screen or eye tracking system, wherein we can see, or the heat map plotting application, wherein I can see as to where users are navigating in the page and where are they stocking, and also the eye tracking things, so that I can understand where exactly they're losing focus or they're getting confused, right? So I will set so stage 3. What we have to do is we have to create a research plan. So we'll say this is the problem statement, this is the hypothesis which we have created. Now to validate this hypothesis, we will need to do this 5-6 items, right? We have to do usability testing, we have to talk to customers, we have to talk to this kind of customers whose persona look like this, age group, everything we have to put it down, and everything has to be jotted down together and along with the team. So this is called plan, research plan, which we have to make. Once the plan is set, then you have to conduct the interview or research, right? As I said, if you have to do a usability testing, if you do a user interview, if you have to do a ethnographic or contextual inquiry, then now you have to practically execute it, right? Now you have to call your user and talk to them in an interview uh, thing, right? So that you will understand the problem statement better. So now you are conducting the research. Okay, stage 4. Stage 5. Now whatever data you have collected via conducting this research, right? All this data has to be put together. Then you have to do a data analysis, try to understand what does data talks about. Does it really match with the hypothesis which we have created on stage 2, or is it isn't? It is something new, right? That we have to put down into the report. Then we will draw a conclusion, right? Again, so we're trying to understand whether those hypotheses are correct or not, or if there is any other hypothesis which we have found out, right? So that we have to put down, and then we'll create a report, and then we will share it with all the stakeholders, most importantly with the PMs or the managers. Okay, so this is how we do the entire research process. Cool. Okay, so now the last part of this session is most important things to remember while conducting a user research. You have to be very careful while doing a research. And why is that so? It's because you are interacting with a human, and humans are unpredictable. Okay, they are unpredictable. So these are the 5-6 things which you always keep in mind while you're doing a user research, so that you can ace the research part of it. So the first one is always remember this: what user says and what they do are two different things. Okay, very carefully understand this. If a user comes to you and say, I have this problem, I'm having this difficulties using your interface, it might not be exactly what they are referring to. It might be something else. Okay, because humans are generally bad at explaining things or telling their problem statements. I've given the example of Sony headphones a lot of time. I'll try to give it now here as well. So Sony did a research to understand which color of headphones works best, or the teenagers will love the most, the black color one or the yellow color, right? So they have called a lot of teens for the research, and when the researcher asked them as to which color they would prefer the most, they didn't ask it directly. I'm just giving you a reference to it. So when they asked them as to which color they will prefer the most, most of them have opted for yellow color, right? So they are saying that they will like the yellow color to be purchased. Great. And then the researchers told them that as a token of gift, right, we want to give you something. Can you go to the next room and collect your gift as a token to come for this interview, right? So all the teenagers, they went to the next room and they found the same two headphones, Walkmans, Sony Walkmans were there, same color, yellow and black. And to the surprise of all the researchers, maximum teenagers picked up the black color. So they said yellow they will buy, but when it comes to their real test, they picked up the black one. So that's what it said. What user says and do are two different things. So you have to truly validate whatever they are saying are correct. Okay, so when they tell you that I need this feature, can you build an export to Excel feature for me, right? These are the things which they will ask you to do, but you don't have to pick up that way. What you have to do is you have to ask why 5 times. Say, why do you need that? Why do you need an export to Excel feature? Then he might say, oh, you know what, I will take up the data and will export to Excel and then create some charts, or we'll create a beautiful tables out of it. Then there's an opportunity for us, right? If your product already does that, then you can guide him and say, we already have that feature through which you can create charts in our platform. Why aren't you using that? Again, second time I'm asking, why aren't you using this? The user might say, oh, your charts are difficult to use. See, you get an opportunity here. He said, because your charts are difficult to use, he wants an export to Excel feature, right? So your product is not performing well. Difference, he said he wanted an export to Excel feature, but reality, the problem is with the charts, dashboards, right? So that's what you always have to remember, that what user says and do are two different things. Next, set clear research goal. Very, very important. Do not just blindly, jump into something. Whenever you got a problem statement from your product manager or from your analytic people or from any stakeholders, do not directly jump into it, right? Sit with them and try to understand, what should we achieve? What should we do? What should the end goal look like? Prepare to get a bouncer. Okay, so this is a cricket word. When you play a cricket, when a bowler gives you a bouncer, which goes over your head, you should. It's a bouncer. It's unplayable, almost unplayable. So what I'm trying to say here is, prepare to get a bouncer, in the sense you are dealing with a human being. There might be day, or there might be chances that he might give you he might ask you something which you are not able to answer, which you are not capable of answer. For example, you are not, or for example, they will ask for a roadmap. How do you see, in 3 months, how are you going to make this features functionality, right? That is not your forte, or that's not your field of work, right? So you cannot answer those kind of questions. So you cannot say, okay, this is not my question, can we just stick to our user research? You cannot do that, right? So you should always have a good, polite answer to them. This is one of the bouncer which I'm talking about. Polite answer to them is, okay, or whatever answer you might have for your team, whatever your team thinks that you should tell to your user, you should tell them. So these are one type of bouncer which I just talked about. So prepare for all kind of bouncer might come in your research, in your interview or research. Stick to the plan, right? You must have a plan. That, as I've informed you in earlier slide, that you should create a plan, and then inside that plan there will be a set of questions which you want to ask to your user, right? When user was started explaining their pain points, it is very tempting to change the path, right? To understand more about that problem or something else, diverting from current things which we are researching on, current goal which we are researching on. It would be very tempting, but do not do that. Write it down somewhere, but come back to the plan again. Write it down, whatever problem statement they are talking about, which is not related to this, right? You should write it down and come back to the plan and say, okay, let's talk about this, right? We have noted it down. This problem has been noted. I have noted this down, the problem. I'll share it with my team. Let's come back to the problem statement which we are talking about currently. So stick to the plan. Always stick to the plan, okay? Don't overdo things. You don't have to do usability testing with hundreds of people. It has been shown in a lot of research that if you do a usability testing with five people, that is more than sufficient. If you do an interview with 5 people also, that is more than sufficient. Okay, if you overdo anything, that is like, you're wasting everyone's time. So do not overdo things. Make it simple, make it clear. Okay, this is the goal, these are the things which we have to do to achieve this goal, and these are the point which we have to take care of. That's it. Do not overdo things. Okay, don't make things complicated for other department to understand what we are doing. Okay, awesome. And lastly, always do a test run. So once your plan is created, you're done, right? Then you always do a test run of it, whether your recordings are properly done, your eye tracking machine is working, your scripts are proper, you're asking question in a very tandem way, you have the setup ready, the system is working, the questionnaires are ready, the links are working, everything you have to check in that test run. So always do a test run before you bring in some live users to it. Okay, so this are the 6 most important things we should always do while doing a user research. That's it for this session. Thank you so much for joining us. And next week, which is going to be very important, where we're going to talk about how do you prepare yourself for a job interviews, UX job interviews, right? What are the particular type of questions generally being asked in an interview, design interview, and how do you answer those questions, right? How do you find out where the jobs are, how to apply to the jobs, and how you can be successful while finding a jobs.